You opened 17 tabs last week, maybe more. One on learning Spanish, one on starting a business, one on how to play the guitar, one on astrophysics, one on sourdough bread for some reason. And you didn't finish any of them. Not because you're lazy, not because you're unfocused, but because something inside you genuinely lights up for all of it. And that feeling, that electric pull toward everything, is both the most alive you ever feel and the most exhausting thing about being you. This video is for you, the one who can never just have one thing. Picture this. You're at a dinner party. Someone asks what you do, what you're into, what your passion is. Simple question. Should be simple. But you freeze. Because the honest answer is coding and watercolor painting and true crime podcasts and philosophy and fitness and cooking. And you've also been low-key obsessed with medieval history for the past 3 weeks and you're not sure why. So instead of saying all of that, because you know how it sounds, you pick one. You say something safe, and for the rest of the night you feel slightly invisible, like you edited out the most interesting parts of yourself just to seem more manageable. That feeling has a name, and it's been following you your entire life. There's a concept that psychologist Barbara Sher described decades ago, and it never fully made it into mainstream conversation the way it should have. She called people like you a scanner. Not a diagnosis, not a disorder, a type. Scanners are people whose minds are wired to explore broadly, rather than deeply in one fixed direction. Where most people are drilled down into a single well, scanners are spread out across an entire landscape, picking up signals from everywhere. And here's what nobody tells you about that. It's not a malfunction. It's actually a profoundly sophisticated way of experiencing the world. But it doesn't feel that way, does it? Because the world wasn't built for you. Think about the messages you've received since childhood. Pick a subject, choose a career, find your one thing, stick with it, go deep, commit. And every time you got excited about something new, there was always someone, a teacher, a parent, a well-meaning friend, who said some version of, "You need to focus." So you internalized that. You started believing that your curiosity was a problem to be solved, that your inability to settle was some kind of character flaw, that you were scattered, inconsistent, maybe even a little unreliable. You started finishing less, not because you lost interest, but because somewhere along the way you learned to feel ashamed of starting. Sit with that for a second. You stopped beginning things not from laziness, but from the fear of what abandoning them would say about you. Here's the psychological truth underneath all of this. People with many interests are often running on a nervous system that finds meaning through novelty and connection. Your brain doesn't just want to know one thing, it wants to know how everything connects to everything else. You're not unfocused, you're pattern-seeking. And the painful irony? That cross-domain thinking, the ability to pull from music and science and art and psychology all at once, is actually one of the rarest and most valuable cognitive traits a human being can have. Leonardo da Vinci was a painter, an engineer, an anatomist, a musician, a botanist, and a writer. He wasn't confused about his identity, he was just wired differently than the people around him. So were most of the people who changed how the world thinks. But here's where it gets complicated, because knowing that doesn't fix the loneliness of it. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with being someone who is deeply interested in many things. It's the loneliness of never feeling fully known, because the parts of you that light up over neuroscience are different people to the parts of you that cry at jazz music at 2 in the morning. And you've never quite figured out how to introduce them all to someone at the same time. You've probably started explaining yourself and watched someone's eyes glaze over. You've probably had moments where you thought, maybe I should just be simpler. You're not supposed to be simpler. Let's talk about something that might sting a little. The reason a lot of multi-passionate people never build anything lasting isn't because they run out of interest. It's because they've been using the wrong model for how to live. They've been trying to force themselves into the specialist narrative. Pick one, ignore the rest. And it never works, not fully, because half of them is always leaking out somewhere. What actually works, what the research on generalists and polymaths consistently shows, is integration, not elimination. You don't have to choose between who you are. You need to find the through line, the common thread that ties your interests together, because there always is one. The person obsessed with history, psychology, and music isn't scattered. They're obsessed with how human beings make sense of suffering. That's one deep thing expressed in 3 directions. Think about your own interests for a moment. Honestly, what is the invisible question underneath all of them? Because I promise you there is one. Here's the twist, and it's the part most people with too many interests never hear. Your problem was never that you cared about too many things. Your problem was that you were handed a story about yourself that didn't fit, and you spent years trying to fold yourself into it. You weren't failing at being a specialist, you were just succeeding at being something no one had a good word for. The world is finally starting to catch up. The most sought-after people in creative industries, in tech, in leadership, in innovation, they are the ones who can move fluidly between domains, who can bring something from film into medicine, from architecture into software design, from philosophy into business strategy. The thing that made you feel like a problem your whole life is the thing that the future actually needs. So here's where I leave you. Not with a productivity system, not with 5 steps to finally pick your niche, with a different question. What if you stopped trying to narrow yourself down and started trying to understand yourselves more fully? What if, instead of asking which interest to keep, you asked what all your interests are trying to tell you about who you are? You are not too much. You are not unfocused or flaky or impossible to understand. You are someone whose mind was built to hold more than one world at a time. That is not your flaw. That is your whole entire point.